Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on growth in a remote environment. My name is Muhammad Irtiza. I have been working as a product owner at CreditBook. And we have with us Andrii. He used to work for SWVL as the head of engineering, coming from a very diverse and very extensive background. A little bit about myself, and then we'll dive right in with Andre. I started off my journey in 2020 in product. I used to work at a startup called Zord, which was a blockchain startup. Just sort of fell into product management. Immediately realized that it was my passion, and every day has been amazing since then. Learning new things every day. It's a job that is never it never gets old. Worked there at Sort, and then back in early 2022, I joined CreditBook, looking for a new challenge, and it has been an extremely rewarding journey so far. Working directly on improving the financial outcomes for micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we'll just dive right in with Andre. Andre, tell us how your journey has been. Tell us a little about yourselves.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Irtiza. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrii. I'm Ukrainian. I currently live in Sweden, in Stockholm. I moved here 8 years ago with my family. And over the course of, I guess, around more than 15 years, I worked in various engineering roles across B2B, B2C, B2G domains with different companies. And just to give you a few names of the companies I work at, was SWVL, as Irtiza mentioned. SWVL is the ride-hailing bus hailing startup in the Middle East, and also been Spain, across Europe and Latin America. Before that, I worked at Smartber, King, and Spotify, just to name a few more companies. And my passion has always been helping people in solving challenges that they face with through building digital products. And I work mainly in engineering, but I was exposed both to product management and product leadership within other domains. So happy to be here and share my perspective with everybody, and looking forward to the conversation.
Perfect. And full solidarity with whatever is happening in Ukraine right now. And let's just dive right into our topic. So starting off, let's discuss a little bit about working in a remote environment. So recently, it was in the news that Elon Musk has called back all the senior employees at Tesla to return to their office, and we are seeing it around the globe in the news as well, that a lot of the major tech players as well, they are calling back their employees in person. So just off the bat, what is your preferred mode of working, like hybrid, remote, or in person? And why specifically do you prefer this mode of working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also read that article about the Elon Musk and lots of reactions, but I guess it was like a mixed reactions for how people reacted to that message. Some people liked it because they like his leadership and how he showed an example of sleeping in the factory and kind of showing an example of how to work in his company. So I guess as CEO, he has certain rights to create a culture he wants to create, but then of course it sets a tone and pace for other organizations who might want to follow. Right, same as other big tech companies were also trying to push people to come to the office. Like we heard a story from Google and Apple, and some employees didn't want to do that, so they kind of started create a collective and push for remote work, or at least a flexibility to be working from home. And now I know even in some countries, like in Netherlands, I read the news recently, Netherlands even passed into the law that working from home or working remotely shall be your right as an employee, right? So the employer has provided that in Netherlands, which is I think very good move in terms of having more kind of freedom as an employee to kind of ask for flexibility, because for some people who, let's say, in their beginning of their career, so for them maybe it's more preferable to go to the office, but people who have kids have some other reasons why they would stay at home taking care of their people who they need to take care of, or parents or other family members, so they might not allow as much flexibility to come to the office every day, right? So but being more inclusive, I think, is good to offer a flexibility to employees to choose whether they would want to come to the office or whether they would want to stay at home. But I guess there are different roles which might require you to be physically in the office. For example, if you work in a bank, then if you work with cash, so then to get cash you need to be physically counting the cashier, right? So same with some other jobs, right? So for tech roles where we are programmers, managers, designers, test engineers, data scientists, I guess in our domain, unless we work with some kind of secret environment, which also kind of requires people to be physically in location, and so nothing leaves the room, like a clear room kind of environment. So unless you work in that kind of domain, I guess it's very beneficial for companies to open the option for people to choose how they want to work. But then, of course, it comes with certain obligations that how you need to design the organization, how you need to shape organization, and overall how to design your teams and communication path within your teams. As the bigger your company is, the more complicated that kind of, or complex that question becomes, right? So for me personally, I've been working kind of remote even 10 years ago. Back in Ukraine, I worked for outstaffing companies where clients who I work for were either in US or Europe, so we always had to interact remotely, even though I've been coming to the office every day to meet my team, or sometimes I could stay at home as well to take calls with the client and have stand-up with my team as well. But it was like an in-office culture by default, but you had the flexibility to work from home when you had the need for that. But I was young back then, so I really want to be in the office to spend time with the people and catch up and stuff like that. So, but now since over the years, I have kids, I have family, and also commuting to the cities longer, because with kids you want to kind of move out of the city and live very closer to the nature and kind of playgrounds and stuff. So, I appreciate the flexibility of working remote, but then I personally really want to meet people, sometimes face to face, because I work as a manager. So for me, sometimes you really want to get that kind of personal feel. Okay, so how would that be when we meet together, have some chats, just informally catch up about life and about things, or do some kind of collaborative sessions when you talk about strategy or some new product designs and some kind of complex issues. So that much quicker to do when you work go in person on the whiteboard and through different conversations. So I appreciate this kind of hybrid environment, but I when I say hybrid, I don't mean 1 day a week in the office or 2 days a week in the office. When I say hybrid, it's more like remote by design, but then meeting in person once a month, twice a month, something like that. So that would be my personal preference, I would say.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense. Here at CreditBook, we are a remote first company. We primarily only meet once a week within our offices in Karachi and Lahore. And apart from that, we do have an on-site every quarter in which, everybody from across the world, we all do come and meet and get to know each other. But primarily, I think it's the best model. You can enjoy the benefits of remote working, and you can also get to know your peers as well. Which brings me back to my next question. So people have criticized remote working for not providing enough opportunities for collaboration. How have you structured your teams in the past to get past that? I mean, how effective are remote stand-ups in engineering and agile terms and sprints when teams are located in different time zones? And how have you managed to overcome these limitations when teams are working across different time zones and different modes of working?
Yeah, I guess a few important things to mention when it comes to designing team interactions, and also the answer will kind of depends on what kind of size of the organization we're talking about. If it's like a small team of 10 to 20 engineers, you could make it work geographically distributed across the globe and doing async interactions through code reviews and some kind of catch-ups from time to time, unless, of course, if you build some kind of very highly interactive collaborative system which requires you to be very close and kind of expand your collaboration hours to the maximum. So I would say it depends, but then in most cases, if you kind of expect very tight collaboration, especially when the domain of a problem is not very well known, so it means you need to experiment a lot. So in that case, you would want to you want to maximize collaboration hours for your team. So typically when you look on the remote environments, let's say people can't meet physically, but you at least want to have 4 to 6 hours of overlap during the day. So for example, when I was designing my teams, where it was Smarbr or Swivel, So then we looked within EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa, because time zone wise, it's kind of roughly similar. So like interacting with US was a bit more challenging. We had some people in US and they had to like work very odd hours to kind of work with us, and some people been in India. It was kind of similar on another side, or some people from Singapore. So that kind of getting harder as it throws the people out of the time zone, because you want to have at least 4 to 6 hours if you want to work very tightly in the team. But when it comes to working like let's say on the async level, like let's say if you have somebody quite senior who mainly work on strategy and need to interact only with the leadership team, then you can bring them from any other location and kind of design those interaction sessions, let's say 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, and then the rest time spent for async preparation, where it is like preparing some content, research, doing some other meetings on the side. Let's say if somebody works on sales partnerships, so they need to work like in US, they will spend day collecting the data about the US market, then present the result in the evening European time, but for them it would be like morning next day. So it could work, but then again, if you work like in software engineering and product in the active like product development, you would still want to have very kind of aligned team with very overlapped hours. And second thing comes to mind, so I think we spoke about that before the session. That's we talked about the people who just new to the industry, and for them, being in person and like in the office creates more opportunity in terms of learning and kind of picking up those informal conversations with their colleagues, where it is like on the coffee stand, or where it is going for lunch together. There's a lot of knowledge being passed through that informal conversation, which would junior or just new colleagues or interns would miss out from, right? So I would say like for remote environment, it's still like a tricky question. I haven't heard any company kind of narrow it down, having like algorithm how to solve this kind of problem in a good way. But different companies, I know myself, we try different approaches, like doing like more programming sessions when it is like a team of engineers, so like everyone kind of in one session learning from each other and passing control over Zoom call from one to another, so they can do the coding. The other things would be like random donut sessions in Slack. You have this bot who kind of randomly connect different people so they can introduce each other and talk about what they do in a company and how they can help. Then also, I was asking my managers to be more deliberate, working with less experienced colleagues to make sure that they have all the information, all the tools, resources they need to feel they can develop themselves and not feeling like they're missing out from something. But yeah, I know it's been challenging, but still like with kind of open discussion, when you attend to the needs of each individual, you still kind of can tailor the plan of what that person needs exactly to be productive and effective and keep on learning and growing at work. So that's actually forces managers to be more deliberate in their one-to-one, because like when it is in the office, like some manager might kind of swing a little bit, like, oh yeah, we spoke yesterday, I just see you like for 5 minutes, let's keep this one-to-one. And actually keeping one-to-one is not a good idea, so you always have to keep your one-to-ones. Even if you need to skip, then you just reschedule it for another time, but never like forget about it or just cut short. So especially for less experienced people, so they need to have more guidance, more support, and more investment from the company, not only from manager, but also from the company, because then on the company level, company needs to recognize that it's an organizational challenge, organizational problem. So what we as a company need to do in order to help our all our employees, but especially this group who would otherwise kind of would feel like left out, right? So
Yeah, most definitively. Like it's one of the most quoted sayings in the world of management that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And in a remote environment, it's really difficult to replicate that sort of a culture, which is possible in an in-person environment. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but companies have been evolving really fast. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, like such a widespread remote working environment. This is after COVID, and companies are evolving, and we hope to see a new era of working in which remote working is it actually becomes more common instead of less. Of course, like my next question from you would be like, what are your most useful tools for remote working? Which tools facilitate your remote working environment and sort of mitigate any risks or any pain points of remote working?
Yeah, I guess it's maybe hard to call any kind of silver bullet kind of tool which will mitigate all the risk, because I guess risk will be very specific to each organization. You need to look like specifically what your challenges are in your company and what tool would help to mitigate the challenge, but also to mention that following the agile principles, that tools, people interactions are over the tools. So tools doesn't need to be used as a kind of main purpose for interaction. Tools is just enabler for certain events to happen. For example, Miro boards, something I use personally very much. So for me, it's like a replacement of a whiteboard. So otherwise, I would use a whiteboard in the office, where it is in the conference room or somewhere in a space if the company invested into that infrastructure. But Miro it's a great tool. So it helps you to kind of expand your hands, like, and describe yourself, like, just visually how you would do it, like with pen and paper, but in a collaborative way. So everyone has freedom to interact with the board and put in their own ideas and comments, and kind of feeling like we're in this together, right? So the other tool I would say, which I used even before pandemic, Google Docs. It's very useful for text editing or spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets for some kind of calculation. So displaying like using work-based P&Ls or some kind of budgeting and plannings. So it's collaboratively working on that together is very helpful. Slack, obviously, emails. That's a given. I can't come up with any. Maybe I just don't remember, but we've been playing with some kind of retrospective tools. I remember in one of my teams, some managers, they took, I don't remember the name of the tool, but it was a tool which helped conducting the retrospective in a very kind of step-by-step kind of way. So otherwise, you just use like a sticky notes on the board and kind of go one by one, like clustering them, like dot voting and stuff. But that's maybe retrospective something.io. I don't remember exactly. I need to check the name of the tool, but it was kind of very organized, where you kind of place, like, step number 1, you place your ideas. Step number 2, you cluster them. Step number 3, you vote. Number 4, you discuss them one by one, and then you have next actions of what you need to act on from your perspective. And few teams, like my organizations, they like that tool, and I think then we bought a license, so then more teams wanted to use it as well. So I think that's one I could recommend for somebody who wants to structure how their team runs retrospective. But you can do the same with Miro boards and using other collaborative tools. Just so that tool was kind of very kind of strictly specific to the flow of work of facilitation.
Most definitively, like Miro is one of the products that is very important for any product owner or product manager working in this remote working environment.
Slack, just to mention, I'm not affiliated. I'm not affiliated with any of those companies, so it's not like an advertisement. So we just mentioned those tools since we've been using them, but it's not affiliated anyhow. Just saying.
Most definitively. So interesting. This is Miro. There is Slack, of course, Notion for documentation. And Google Docs for spreadsheets, etc. This is the holy grail of remote working nowadays. So my next question, we would like to move towards product growth in a remote environment specifically. So, there are tech companies like Slack, Dropbox, and Calendly that have found success through product-led growth. So for the audience, can you tell us that what can be inferred from product-led growth specifically? And how do you reckon it is better than a sales-led company or marketing-led company, for example?
Yeah, I guess maybe the first thing to say when you talk about the product-led organization is to define what is being a product-led company, because there's so much confusion which I run with many folks when we talk about that. Some people believe that product-led means that product managers are the only leaders in the company, and whatever PM says, everyone needs to follow, and that is not what product-led actually means. Right? So that's what you need to define, saying that product-led means that everyone needs to have a product mindset, from sales, marketing, legal, finance, to product design and engineering. So everyone needs to think about the product and all the design activities, all work you do in terms of building your roadmaps, building your plans, need to come from a perspective that the value we produce to our customers is through our product offering, not through the service offering, not through sales cycles, not through our brands and marketing campaigns, but through this value streams that what we define as a value stream, which materialize as some kind of graphical interface where you click something, upload your documents, or do whatever, right? But otherwise, I mean, the alternative to that could be like if you focus on being a service company. So then you would say like the service we provide. Let's say we have operations team, and operations team, I know, does data crunching or wherever they do, right? So then we optimize for hiring more operations people and make their life easier. But then you kind of shift focus from your customer to your internal operation team. It's probably not your intention, but that's what happens in a service-based companies in many cases. But then if you shift into the perspective on a customer, so if we start talking about, okay, we want to produce value to our user, because that kind of, we know that it will generate like a flywheel of revenue, because the customer like our product, then it most likely they will recommend this product to somebody else, and somebody else will create like this network effect when people kind of become your brand ambassadors over time, right? So if you build a good product, right? So which it's one of the biggest topic about the product-led growth, that where you create like a self-service system where any customer can enter your application, whether it's your website or whatever channel you use for acquisition of a customer, and then easily get to the process of entering through your kind of funnel, right? By themselves in a self-service way. So and one of the easier way to distinguish whether a company is sales-led or product-led is by just looking on the website. Like when I interview for the companies or when I talk to somebody, the first thing I do, I open the website, and then do I have a trial? Can I try the product myself without calling your sales team? If I can, okay, now we're talking. Now it's a product-led, because now what you put into the mindset, into the development flow, that in order to try my product, I don't need to call anyone. I can just go try, give a trial. I can add my credit card or debit card, and then I can buy it myself without even calling customer support or sales. And that's kind of this flywheel, this spin loop, right? I mean, we can talk further about retention, generating the habits and habit formation and psychology. But yeah, I guess the main definition of product-led is whether you define your organization where everyone thinks about the product, and how you design your internal company processes. So it's not like a sales who is driving the growth of the company, but it's a product, the system you built, which is driving the revenue and growth of the company. And that is the biggest difference, right? So, and I personally like working more in the product-led organizations than sales-led. I mean, I work in both, and I work in the companies who are doing the transformation from sales-led to product-led. And we kind of been going through these discussions of what it means to be product-led, which kind of takes a while for people to change their mindset and kind of understand new paradigm of working and thinking. But yeah, I believe that working in a product mindset is more fun, because then, regardless of your role, you feel engaged into the value formation and future of your company. So then, ideally, I mean, if you kind of embed those product mindset values into your culture, then like any entry level engineer or person in your company shall be empowered to suggest new ideas of how else can we improve our product to make life easier, or generate more revenue, generate more leads, improve some flows, improve some KPIs. I mean, whatever you define as the improvement metric. Yeah, I don't want to go too far away. You can ask me more specific, but I really like working in a product-led organization. I think it's a good trend, it's a good shift, but it's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding what it actually means in the industry that we need to fix.
Yeah, I agree. My observations have been quite similar. I absolutely love working in product-led organizations, and very interesting observation from your end that you can actually, with much accuracy, determine if a company is sales-led or product-led through how their website is structured. And this has been a rather recent but a very successful business model. So, yeah, very interesting. Let's go into some more specificities right now. So in your previous roles, in engineering roles that you've had in the past, how involved was the engineering team in product growth specifically? Do engineers have a say outside of their functional areas, and is it even worth it? Is it even beneficial for engineers to go outside of their functional areas and have a say in other decisions made outside of engineering?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it was different in different companies, depending on their maturity and this domain, and also their ambition, aspiration. So I worked with some companies who were like, they started as being product-led company, and they remained the product-led company after many years they've been at. So, and that environment was very rewarding to be like, regardless if you're engineer or designer, so it didn't matter your role or title. It's about an idea. So the best idea shall win in open discussion, right? So, I mean, again, as company grows and matures, that kind of dynamic changes a bit, and then kind of there are different kind of levels of freedom you have. Like there's like, tactical level, what you do every day. There's operational level, you do like, every kind of second week, every month, and there is a strategical level of what you do every quarter, every year, right? So on that level. So, and then it depends on the kind of size and maturity of the company. The different degree of freedom you have as on kind of the lower. The further you are from strategy making, right, from decision making. It also depends how companies structure themselves. Let's say if companies become very hierarchical, so all the decisions are driven by founders and then by CEO and then by the board or whatever, how they kind of define the power dynamics and decision making structure in the product management. So it kind of depends on who kind of drives the show and what kind of topics are enforced as the kind of strategical leverage and what topics are enforced as the operational leverage. So again, I work on the spectrum of those differences. I would say like it's very empowering to be like an engineer. If you work in engineering, it's very, or any other role. I'm biased for engineering, so excuse me for my repetition. But if you work in a smaller company, it's very rewarding to have impact on all those three levels, from tactical to strategical, just because you've been exposed. Company is small and founders sit very close to you, typically in one space. You always go on lunches together or dinners, so you always can talk to that and influence the direction of a product. But then the further out you are from kind of key decision maker, and if that decision maker is not organized in their organization to move the decision making down to where the work actually happening, then the more disconnects are created, right? And that's kind of the biggest challenges I've seen in companies who scales, and when they because they believe that, or maybe they do subconsciously in most of the cases. And when company is small, everything is like quick and fluid, and ideas go well. But then the more people they introduce, the more hierarchy and levels they introduce, the more you lose that kind of interaction. And then founders typically who play a role as CEOs, and or if they appoint somebody to be a CEO later on, the company grows. It becomes more like a traditional company. You go into a very traditional mindset of, okay, you define your KPIs on the sales targets, you define your financial targets, you define your roadmap, and then you lock a roadmap for a year, and then you have a budget, then you hire, then you build something, then you maybe launch something, then you market it. So you kind of go into this kind of traditional sales cycle, right? So, and that's kind of sometimes very sad to see, when companies they wanted to be faster, they want to be flexible and agile, not in big A, but in small a. They want to be very quickly operating, deliver value, but because they already gotten so many people who work in traditional way, it's very hard to change. And then they try to bring another set of people who know how to bring this flexibility, but then it becomes constant kind of tension between the two organizations, especially as it grows. And that's kind of gets sometimes easy to solve, sometimes not as. Sometimes you have the discussion, okay, so can we set how can we empower our teams to be more closer to decision making, to strategy, not only being operational. I mean, sometimes you even don't have leverage to be operational, challenging products on operational level. Sometimes PMs feel like they obligated to come with a clear requirements and specifications and ask engineering to build it. And I've been in those situations as well. And then you have a conversation like, okay, it's not possible. Let's come back to the drawing board, discuss it once again. So you kind of create leverage for your team to have more space to suggest new ideas, right? So initially you start with some kind of technical depth improvements and some technical infrastructure, and then further out, as you build credibility and trust with PMs, then you can ask for more suggestions and bring more ideas and come to strategical level as well, and kind of suggest how I had a conversation, for example, of how can we improve performance and latency of a system, which would improve company revenue, because it has very high correlation to retention of users, right? So, and that's very kind of connected to how engineering can influence, product development. Just as a very technical example, but then there could be more in terms of what kind of new products we could build, what new features we could build based on our own feelings or based on our data that we got from analytics. Because engineering mindset might get a different kind of ideas and product or data science mindset. So like it's always good to have this open culture when everyone can bring those ideas to the table. But again, as company matures and grows bigger, the more the standard products being introduced, and companies, in most cases, lose that early stage feel that everything is smooth and can be quicker together. But
Definitely.
there are still ways to make it kind of come back based on your org design and org structure. But that's maybe topic for another discussion.
Definitely. No, this has been my observation as well. Like the best time to work at a startup is at the very early stages, and, as the company scales, it's relatively difficult to maintain that sort of flexibility. But it is always possible with the right leadership, with the right set of policies. It's always possible. And also, like, uh, it doesn't have to be the product manager just coming with rigid requirements and, handing them over to engineering. It has been very fruitful to, involve engineering from the very start of any product development process. So, just first of all, having good working relationship with engineers to be able to do this. Then, of course, having them be available in the very early stages of the product, so that we do not go down in a direction that is not very feasible from an engineering perspective as well. And so, yeah, product and engineering, these two functions, they are inseparable. And uh, of course, like, good collaboration is absolutely important between the both of these functions. All right, we are a little bit short on time. I'll go ahead with the last question. Historically, product growth has been an involved process, where customer feedback is taken and meaningful products are sort of co-created with customers. Is the same level of collaboration even possible in a remote setting? um, you know in some cases you might have customers that are not very tech savvy. So even if you're a remote team, even if you're working remotely, it's not very possible to co-create with them on, on Google Meet or any other internet-based solution. So, for example, in Web3 and blockchain, it was very easy to connect with a very geographically diverse set of users. I mean, somebody could be sitting in, Germany, for example, or the United States, and it would be very easy for that demographic to be able to connect with them. But of course, when you're building for the next billion users, for example, or people that are just discovering the internet, is it even possible for a team to be fully remote in order to interact with them? And if not, then how does one mediate that? How does one co-create with these users that are not very tech savvy?
Yeah, just trying maybe to narrow down the question that you asked, just so maybe I understand it better. But do you mean like working with the non-technical users or non-technical people within the company? Which was also
Definitely. I mean that the users that are not very technically savvy. So I'm basically referring to the end users.
okay, user research.
Um,
Okay.
yes, and also like co-creating with them. How is that possible? For like, it's very imperative for product growth managers, for example, to be able to know their customer very well. It's not always possible to
Yeah,
do that
yeah, yeah. I
online.
see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, if you would, let's say, making a product for somebody in Africa who didn't work with computer and just have like some kind of
Yes.
low end phone and doing all their business through WhatsApp messages. I know some people are doing lots of
Yes.
work with that. So then, of course, kind of having this prototyping interactions over Zoom, kind of, I would believe like get people very confused. I mean, you can
Yeah.
make it work through, let's say like if you have like your design team in one location, let's say I don't know in Dubai, like just pick an example because I worked with Dubai recently, and your users are in, I don't know, just for the sake of example, somewhere in South Africa, in Kenya or Nairobi, let's say, and then you want to have those interactions. So you probably would want somebody to fly into that location, sit close with the user. You probably don't need to fly in everybody from the team because it might be too expensive, and also time zone wise, timing wise, might be very hard to organize because people won't be able to travel and for what reason. But then having somebody very close to that person who can explain how to use the tool, how to call in, and then kind of be like a guide and have a conversation with them while the team is asking those questions they want to ask in the user design. So I guess, but that's kind of not no matter if you work in a remote environment or not. It's just working with non-technical audience, right? So for non-technical audience, you need to invest more into the kind of infrastructure to help design the interactions with control for them to get information you want, and also kind of build out this collaboration flow. Yeah, otherwise, I guess if users are technically savvy and they know how to use a laptop and call in through the browser, then yeah, you can doesn't need to travel, I believe, in that case.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Andre, it has been an amazing experience talking to you. A very productive session, and uh, as on I can speak, I think very comfortably on behalf of the audience as well, that it has been very informative for them as well. So best of luck for the future, man, and take care. Have a good day, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you, Irtiza. Thank you, Ron. We're glad to be here. If you have more questions, reach out on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to help.
Perfect. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. Perfect. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.